Hello, I hope everybody can hear me and welcome all the participants. I will share my presentation with you to start our session. Okay. Can everybody see the screen? Yeah?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I also would like to mention that during the presentation, I welcome very much any questions or comments in the chat. And I hope our participants, our attendees will be proactive, asking questions and commenting on the subject. Also, I will ask questions myself, and hopefully we'll have a discussion with the participants, not just me talking. So let's start. Welcome everybody, and I really appreciate being invited for this Climathon, which is, I believe, a very important target for our planet and a very important target for the young generation of new leaders. So today I'm going to talk to you about a few things which I believe are crucially important for the future. So in a short 40 minutes, we're going to cover, first of all, I'll do an introduction to tell you a few words about myself. I'm going to talk to you about an important topic, which is World Heritage. World Heritage as a phenomenon is different from World Heritage as a brand. And those of you who are studying business will probably appreciate this difference. We're going to talk about the impact of the World Heritage as a brand on the world sustainability. And then we're going to turn to Egypt and talk a little bit about tourism in Egypt and specifically cruise tourism. And we'll end up by discussing the impact of cruise tourism on sustainability of our planet. So that's the plan for today. Let's start with a few words about myself. As the organizers mentioned, I am a holder of the PhD degree, but I want to tell you a few more words about myself. Originally, I am from St. Petersburg, Russia, which I left when I was in my early 20s. I worked for about 20 years. I have more than 20 years of professional experience, business experience in the States, Canada, and Europe, and the Middle East, and more than 10 years of academic experience as a professor in many other countries, specifically in the Middle East. And I'm now located in Egypt and planning to be located here for the years to come, inshallah. In between these two parts of my life, being a professional and being an academic, I also had the stance as an international diplomat at the UNESCO World Heritage Center. And from this position, I'm going to address to you the talk of today related to sustainability and specifically environmental sustainability. I'm fluent in several languages, most importantly Arabic, which I love, and some other languages in which I work and talk. All right, so that's about me. And now let's talk about our first topic, which is the World Heritage. What is a heritage? Can somebody say something in the chat to not to be very boringly talkative? Anybody who would like to talk? Can anybody type, or it's only us who can type?
No, candidates can type.
Anybody can type.
Yes.
Welcome, Karim. So what is a heritage? What do you understand by the World Heritage? Anybody? You can also talk, I don't know, probably. Nobody wants to say anything. Everybody is very quiet. This is not how we roll. The sites that hold historical significance, thank you, Ahmed, preserved remnants of the previous generation. Very good. Excellent. So we have some understanding of the heritage, which is a common sense understanding. So let's see how the professionals understand the World Heritage. So the World Heritage starts actually with the natural heritage. Millions of years ago, our planet consisted only of nature. Anything natural is considered also to be a part of our heritage. That's why it's not only what was created by humans, but also what we started with millions of years ago. This is called natural heritage. Thousands of years ago, we have built heritage, which is what was created by man on the planet. And hundreds of years ago, we also have intangible heritage. Intangible heritage are things like songs, dance, cuisine, something that we cannot touch, but yet it belongs to us as humanity. And overall, the types of heritage, depending on the involvement of a human, can go from natural to being mixed, to being landscapes, even routes, such as, for example, the Silk Route, the cities, the built heritage, and ends with the intangible heritage. So this is the range of the heritage we're talking about. The World Heritage is the one in which nature and human are in one. It means that we at UNESCO, when we talk about heritage, we talk about all types of heritage without any distinction, whether it's natural or cultural or intangible. So all heritage matters. That's the main idea of the World Heritage. In 1972, which is actually exactly 50 years ago, this year, 2022, UNESCO established so-called World Heritage Convention, in which they said that we have to take care of our heritage, cultural and natural heritage, and we need to provide international assistance, technical assistance, to raise public awareness about the heritage, and to encourage international cooperation in the field of heritage conservation. So that happened 50 years ago this year. And of course, the intention was the most noble intention to maintain this heritage. 167 countries participated in this convention. Out of how many countries do we have in the world? Anybody knows? Anybody has a random number of how many countries we have? Can type? Yeah, Mohammed, around that number. This number changes depending on how different islands become part of their colonial part or they become independent. So we can say about 200 countries. Out of these 200 countries, around 167, I just checked yesterday, are part of this World Heritage Convention. When I was the managing director of the center, we had much more than that, but some of them left, including United States, by the way. And World Heritage Center is responsible for creating a so-called World Heritage List, a list of sites which represent the importance for the world, not for the country individually, but for the world. And at the moment, as we are speaking today, there is 1,154 sites on this World Heritage List. Now, let's move. Some countries have more sites listed, such as Italy, for example, 55, 54 sites, etc. You can see on the screen, depending on the activity. Actually, the number of sites depends on the activity of the government of those countries. So if the country is very active, if the country is very interested in placing the sites on the World Heritage List, it will do the necessary paperwork and bureaucracy, proving that the site represents World Heritage, and then during annual conference, it will be put on the list. And this way, the list increases and increases. The first list was established in 1978, and in the conference in 1979, which took place in Egypt, Egypt also received a lot of recognition, and a lot of sites were put during the 1979. So obviously, you can think of the one remaining wonder of the world, the pyramids of Egypt, as being on the World Heritage Site. Anybody else has any idea what kind of locations in your countries or in other countries are on the list? Of course, I will not ask you about the pyramids because it's obvious, right? It's the only one remaining 7 wonders of the world. But now we have 1,000 plus sites. Which other sites do you think are on the list as well? Yellow people, I'm waiting for your answers to make sure you are part of this discussion, because I really want to have it as a discussion. Abu Simbel, yes. Coliseo, yeah. Very important Italian heritage site. Remember the trips that you've been to in other countries? Maybe you know some important monuments in your own countries that can be a part of the heritage list. Okay, so let's see what else do we have. Let's see what else do we have in Egypt. Yeah. So World Heritage in Egypt is represented by 7 sites. First, it's Bumina, which was put on the site, and if it's in red, it means it's endangered. In 79, as I mentioned, in 79, there was the conference of World Heritage took place in Cairo, and as a result, 5 sites were immediately put on the list from the beginning because it was very obvious that they represent the World Heritage. So these are the 5 sites in Egypt. Abu Mina, the Thebes, the historical Islamic Cairo, the pyramids, the Nubian monuments in Abu Simbel. And then in the recent years, like 20 years ago, St. Catherine area was added 20 years ago. And then most recently, one natural site was added in 2005. So as a result, Egypt has 7 sites on the World Heritage List. And what can we say about those sites? First of all, if you remember, we had 7 wonders of the world, right? Now I mentioned we have more than 1,000 sites. And it means that the list is actually becoming very crowded, and there is a dissolution of value in this list. It means the first monuments, such as the pyramids, such as Colosseum in Rome, Paris, other locations, they were of high value, and there were only few of them. One thing, if the list has 10 monuments, 20 monuments, 100 monuments, it's kind of limited, and it gives value to this list. Now this list has more than 1,000 monuments. Therefore, the list is kind of lost its rarity. Because if you're the pyramids, of course, everybody knows that you're one of the 7 wonders. But if you are some random place on a deserted island, people don't know much about you. All right. So this is the drawback of increasing the number of sites on this list. Let's look at the impact of the World Heritage brand. We discussed in the beginning with you that the World Heritage is a phenomena. We have somebody, is value determined by public awareness? That's a very good question, Karim. The value, it also depends for whom, right? Public awareness about the sites is a result of giving the brand of World Heritage to the site, right? So the site itself may represent the value intrinsically for people who live in the country. At the same time, nobody else outside this country might be as aware of this site. But the moment it's put on the list, it becomes publicly known, right, as you're saying, then suddenly the value, which is economic value rather than universal human value, becomes more apparent. And this is a very good leading question, Karim, to the next slide that I'm going to show. Let's look at the impact of the World Heritage brand, which is being on the list, on tourism and sustainability. I'm going to start far away. I will not start in Egypt. We're going to get to Egypt in the next slide. For now, I'm going to start in Angkor. What is Angkor? Anybody knows? What is this? What is it? Where is this location? Angkor. Everybody is looking on Google, right? Nobody ever heard of Angkor. Angkor is a location on the border between Thailand and Cambodia. And at some point, Angkor temples were put on a World Heritage List and profiled. On top of being put on the list, they were profiled by the National Geographic. You all know this journal, I'm sure, published maybe for more than 100 years. It's being published, a very famous magazine where they talk about various places, and out of the blue, they decided to publish a piece on Angkor, and you see what happened. What happened is that the international tourism arrival increased 10,000%, just because Angkor became a part of the World Heritage List, being profiled on National Geographic, and as a result, crowds and crowds invaded this location. Moreover, it was not the end of it. A small war started between Thailand and Cambodia to see who owns this World Heritage Site. Is it the site belonging to Cambodia, or is it site belonging to Thailand? And at some point in my own presence, when I was at UNESCO, Thailand delegation decided to leave the World Heritage Convention simply because at this point in time, it was not attributed to Thailand, this site, although nobody knew about the site before. And of course, we cannot compare this site, which is a temple, with the site like Egyptian pyramids, right? So this is the impact on tourism. Of course, it increases tourism to those sites because of increasing public awareness, yet it creates overcrowding. Let's look at another impact of the World Heritage brand on a natural site such as Great Barrier Reef. What is that? Anybody knows in which country Barrier Reef is? I don't see anybody typing anything. Simple decreases when the site are put right. This is the solution of value. Okay, Ahmed is asking, what is the solution of value? Before we get to the reef, let me answer this question. What I meant by the solution of value is when you have a list, let's say you have a class of a university in which you have 1,000 students, and you say my top 3 students are Ahmed, Mohammed, and Karim. So the value of this award being the top 3 students is much greater when you say, oh, by the way, 500 students are in the upper part of the grades in my university of 1,000 students. When we talk about the crowd of 500 students, each of them, but the value of this award being in top half is smaller than when I give an award to Ahmed, Mohammed, and Karim because they are the top 3. Do you see what I mean? So when the list consisted of only 10, 20, 30 sites, it was a very valuable list. Each site on this list was very known to everybody. Probably it was places that everybody in the world already knew. Now that the site is 1,100 plus list, each individual one is compared, well, it's not compared, it's placed on the list equally. So it's not saying, the list is not saying those who arrived to the list first, they are somehow more important. They're saying everybody who is on the list has the same importance. But now we have 1,000 plus sites. So they are equally important, but this important, the value of this important is less when it used to be when the list was only 10 or 20 sites. I hope this is clear, Ahmed, right? Yeah, please keep asking those questions. I really appreciate questions and clarifications. Let's go back to our Great Reef. So where is the Great Reef? Anybody has an idea? It's not in Egypt. This is another natural heritage site, which is in Australia. the Great Barrier Reef, very famous for very similar natural values such as the corals and fish and fauna inside the reef. So this is a very famous one. It was put at some point on the World Heritage Site. And then what happened? What happened that if 1980, it was a lovely, colorful fauna and nature, and 2015, it became spoiled and started being deteriorated. And UNESCO as an organization has placed Great Barrier Reef on the list of sites in danger, the red list. The list of sites that there is a danger to their value because of over exploitation by tourists and fishermen and etc. So what happened as a result? Fewer and fewer tourists start coming to Australia to go to this barrier reef. First of all, because the reef deteriorated, and second, because it was placed on the danger list and the government was forced to restrict the tourism. But then what happened? The Australian government itself lobbied and lobbied and lobbied UNESCO through power and discussions and political negotiations to remove the Great Barrier Reef away from the danger list. So the government itself, in order to achieve the economic goals, decided that it's more important to keep it as an economic target or to keep the tourism coming instead of protecting the environment. So the reef was taken away from the red list, from the red endangered list. Other governments, such as government, if I remember correctly, of Dubai, of Emirates, decided to remove one of the natural heritage, one of the Mahmiya, like it was a reserve for animals. They decided to remove it because they wanted to build a safari or a zoo or something like this. So some of the countries decide to actually withdraw their sites at some point from the list so that they can do interventions into those sites, create tourist attractions, and do some industrial development. There was a big controversy with Istanbul. At some point, Istanbul is suffering from big traffic, and there was a decision by the government to build a bridge, another bridge. They have already many bridges, to build yet another bridge, somewhere around 2012, I think. And it was a big controversy because the city really needed the bridge, but it was spoiling the landscape, as we were saying at UNESCO. And eventually the government was forced to make this bridge smaller, less illuminated, to maintain the landscape beauty of Istanbul. So you see how this World Heritage brand or World Heritage listing influences both economic aspects and sustainability aspect of sites in different countries. Now let's look at tourism in Egypt. We have a question. Let's see. Is being on the list the same as being recognized in the archive? I mean, to ask whether UNESCO allocates effort to preserve the site in addition to helping make them recognized. Okay, so UNESCO recognized the first step is the site. The country asks UNESCO to place it on the list and to recognize it as a World Heritage. This is the first step. If the government collects enough material, documents, studies of researchers that indeed this site is very important naturally or culturally, UNESCO during the annual convention places the site on the list. And then it says, okay, now you government, it's your responsibility, government, to protect it. UNESCO doesn't have the responsibility of protection. It's only like controlling. Sometimes UNESCO sends experts to see the state of the site and maybe put it on a list in danger. But basically, the responsibility of protection lies on the government of the country where the site is. So it's not UNESCO responsibility. And not always the government see eye to eye with UNESCO, because sometimes the government wants to do some construction near the site to improve the economic situation in the country, and this is what we don't like at UNESCO. Another thing, that only the sites belonging to the government and the country itself can be placed on the site. There was a big controversy in Russia around 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Russia decided to give the ownership of churches and the monasteries to the Russian church. And Russian church is not a government. So UNESCO said, okay, we will delist all the churches and all the monasteries that are placed on the list, because now they are in private hands, and therefore we cannot call on the government to improve them. So you see how all of this is very political, as opposed to being actually sustainable for the good cause. Now let's go back to Egypt. Karim, I hope I answered your question. If not, keep writing questions and comments. I am very happy receiving your comments. Now let's talk a little bit about Egypt, my favorite country, in which I finally live already for a year, hopefully in the long term. Tourism in Egypt, as you know, is very important. If you look at this short summary, number of tourists that visited Egypt before the revolution of 2011 was about 12.5 billion tourists a year. In 2019, before COVID, before Corona, it's reached about the same number of tourists. So we should say that in the standard times, when there is no danger, when there is no pandemics, number of tourists that come to Egypt, we expect it to be about, expected to bring about $13 billion, or about 13 million tourists come to Egypt every year. This is our expectation for normal years. And is it a lot? Is it a little? Let's see. It represents, actually, it's not the biggest contributor to the economy. The biggest contributors to the economy are more, for example, Suez Canal and trade and investments. But still, it's quite a large number. It's 12% of total economy. And it's about, well, we expect it to be about 1 million tourists per month in a good year. Like, hopefully this year, 2022, we're gonna see about 1 million tourists per month, contributing significantly to our country growth. And I say our country because I consider Egypt to be my country as well. After all, it's Dunya, right? So it's also not less important why we want tourists to come, not only to see our heritage, but also to bring their money, to buy our souvenirs, to visit our heritage, and to be amazed by the pyramids and other locations. But also, most importantly, we want to have these 3 million people employed. Right? We want to have 3 million people out of course, million people living in Egypt, 3 million people actually employed in tourism. And this is all good stuff. But is it good stuff when we start talking about this specific type of tourism, which is cruise tourism? Now I'm getting to the last part of my talk, which specifically deals with cruise tourism. And you all know what the cruise is. It's a big ship going on the water, in the river, or in the ocean. And one of the business people called cruises a tiny sunshine sector of international tourism. And why is it so? Mostly because cruise tourism is very lucrative. It makes a lot of money. It's a very small fraction of the global tourism industry. So you see, it's less than 1% of tourists that are going on the cruises. Is less than 5% of all revenues. And we're comparing, of course, with normal tourism by going to the hotels in countries, either individually or as groups. So tourism itself, although the ships are big, but they don't represent a big share of the industry. However, the growth rate of cruise business is more than 10%. This is huge. It means that continuously countries in different countries which are seaborne are putting more and more cruises on the service of the tourists, especially international tourists. And only less than 15% of Americans have taken cruises. So actually, we're not even talking about other countries where people go to cruises even less often. So there is an opportunity to growth, and there is about $250 per tourist per day made by North American ships. Now, what about other ships? What about other geographies? So on this slide, you can see approximate trajectories of the cruises. You see there is a lot of cruises, 60% of them going around Americas, South America, North America. There are a lot of cruises going around the Mediterranean Sea, visiting different ports around the Mediterranean Sea. Luckily, we have a lot of World Heritage sites on this route, and there are some cruises in the Asian side. So what is the business model of this fascinating tiny sunshine sector of the tourism economy? Sea tourism, first of all, is virtually tax-free. Ships usually are attached to a particular location. Usually they change, they choose the location which is tax-free, such as Labrador or some obscure island somewhere, which says, okay, you will not pay taxes, just register yourself in our country. So usually ships are registered in the countries where they are tax-free. Second, most of all ships and cruises have 100% occupancy, and this is always much more than the hotels. Hotels occupancy ranges between 60 to 70% for an average hotel. And as you know, if you didn't sell a room today, this revenue is gone. So if your occupancy is less than 100%, it means you're losing some money just simply because you don't have tourists sleeping in your hotel. This is not the case for the cruises. And the investments the company is putting are being paid out in less than 2 years, as the remaining years become just pure income. Production and consumption of services takes place in the same location, which is very good for the revenue generation. Labor, it's very labor intensive. There is a 2-to-1 passenger to crew ratio. It means for each 2 passengers, there is 1 crew member working on them. And mostly these are low paid labor, which are working 12 to 18 hours a day with a small salary of $500 per month. Shore excursions, of course, are an integral part of the cruise vacation, and some of the ports advertise themselves to cruise line, but less so in the last years because of the issues of sustainability. And I'm going to get to it at the end of my talk. An average tourist spends about 200 per day on the cruise, between entertainment, food, and other things. And while the cruises to provide the food spend not more than $10 per day per tourist. So you can see it basically becomes a pure income, which is kept on the cruise. They don't pay taxes, they generate a lot of money from tourists, and they don't share this money with the ports. Of course, they pay the ports for embarking fees, but they don't share, for example, with the hotels which are residing on the shore. And overall, on board sales and entertainment accounts approximately 40% of all cruise revenue. So what are the cruises revenue? You first of all pay for the cruise itself, then you pay for sales and entertainment. And usually in the entertainment industry, be it a movie theater or be it a casino, so you have a certain part of revenue coming from the sleeping part, where you just have a place on a boat or in a hotel, and the rest of it is coming from selling services and entertainment. So somebody summed up this very nicely by saying the ship can function as a destination itself. You can go on a 7-day cruise and never get off the ship and being equally entertained. And the beauty of this, beauty for the cruise business, that all the money spent on the ship remain on the ship. And I also want to bring to your attention that we are now living in the economy, which is economy of experiences. We already way far off from the world where commodities such as coffee beans or wheat or charcoal was being sold. We already passed the situation when we're buying goods, bags, shoes, of course. Now we're buying more services, but most importantly, we're buying experiences. When you're going to Starbucks, you're buying the experience of being in Starbucks and being seen in Starbucks. When you're going on the cruise, you're buying the experience of being in an adventure, being outside of this world, and being in a place which is very special, not like any other place. And this experience economy is also was recognized that it's a big contributor to how we buy happiness. One of the famous scholars called Daniel Kahneman did a study and published a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, where he talks about how people buy happiness. They buy happiness by spending dollars not on jeans and shoes. They buy happiness by spending them on social activities with other people for whom who are important for them. When spend dollars on new activities and when they spend dollars on experiential purchases. So cruises obviously is one of such activities. So we can argue by extension that people who go on the cruises, they buy them, especially if they are going in a nice company with their friends or loved ones, they are really buying the happiness time. But there is a dark side to the cruises. By the way, the picture is a real picture. Yeah, it's an excellent question, Ahmed. I didn't put the picture in terms of what's the next step. The next step, I have a chart with the next step. I didn't put it on purpose. According to those people who created the chart, the next one is transformation. So you're not experiencing something, you're also transforming something yourself. So this is what they say is an experience, right? Augmented experience when you transform something, make it different. Excellent question, Ahmed. Thank you so much. So let's, you interrupted me when I was just moving to the dark side of cruises. And as I mentioned, the one on the right is an actual picture of an actual cruise having an accident. But let's look at the dark side. This is not the only dark side. This is maybe a very rare dark side, but there is a usual dark side that we cannot get out of. Very interesting phenomena of crimes on board. There is a whole article about that. So people consider when they are on a boat, when they're on a cruise, it's life on the edge experience. They consider that they're in some location where there is no rules. They're in a location where they can go on the edge and do something extraordinary because they are not on land. So all official rules are off. They're off the hook. So the research found that there is much more stealing, even raping, beating, drinking on the boat of the cruises. Yeah, and okay. Second, dark side is, of course, it was coming. You all knew this point will be coming, but you didn't know how big the ecological pollution and drama is around the average cruise. Average cruise ship generates 100 gallons of wastewater every day. And what's worse, burning and dumping of all the waste in the water is legally permissible in international waters. And international waters begin just 200 kilometers away from the shore. So basically, all waters, ocean waters are international waters. Cruises are huge, huge, huge polluters of our big ocean, of our planet. And finally, I already mentioned that there is a labor exploitation where people work crazy hours for very low salaries. So obviously we can argue about the importance of this negative aspect. Of course, for me, the ecological pollution is just way too big not to be taken into account, given especially the rise in the cruise tourism. And there is also not much benefits for the cruise location. And this is the case study I did in Venice, where I studied the impact of cruise tourism on the Venetian, on Venice as a city. First of all, there is a clear lagoon destruction and the destruction of the natural habitat of the city. This goes without saying. But what not everybody knows, when the cruise comes, all the money is spent on the ship. So hotels are not benefiting from tourists coming on the cruise. Most tourists don't actually leave even the main place, the main marketplace, Piazza San Marco, for more than 50 meters. So the benefiting locations are literally like dozens. But the Venice as a whole is suffering because of the environmental destruction. So it's much better for Venice to host tourists coming by air or coming by train, and then they can be accommodated in different hotels and in different places of the Venice, which is very small already, than to host these huge ships which destroy the lagoon, don't give any income to the hotels, and very limited income to a few shops on the main square. So this is the dark side of the cruise tourism and cruise sustainability. And I would like to bring to your attention these problems because you are our future generation. I actually have high hopes for your generation. As I see in my students, I'm a professor at the American University in Cairo, and I really enjoy teaching my Egyptian students and other students coming to the class. And I see a lot of hope in your generation. And this is why I decided to participate in this Climathon, because I think it's very important to raise your awareness about the dangers of some of the positive yet questionable tourism practices. That's all which I have for you today in terms of my talk, and I would like to open it for questions. I'd like to ask the host how much time we have for questions.
We have 5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, please, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead. Otherwise, thank you for your attention. And I hope my talk will raise some of the thoughts in your heads. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can always do so. My contacts are available on the AUC website and LinkedIn and other places. And guys and girls, feel free to ask questions in the chat or comment. And if you would like to connect privately, you can reach out afterwards. And of course, the recording and the presentation will be available from the event organizers. And I thank everybody for your participation during my presentation. And I thank the organizers for putting together such a great event.